I think it's safe to say that visual novels are a bit weird. I've recently been playing 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim and Valhalla Cyberpunk Bartender Action, and between the talking cats, talking dogs, killbots, sexbots, and, lest we forget, the gay time traveler from World War II getting domed by his twink cross-dressing boyfriend from the future, love that guy by the way, yeah, weird seems to be like a pretty good summary. But that isn't exactly a bad thing, is it? In a medium where so much of the market is constantly trying to copy the few original ideas that come out of it, it's nice to know that there's a little corner of the games market that's content to sit back and do its own little thing. And sure, that's usually porn, but hey, there's a lot of unique ideas floating around as well. In any event, today I'll be talking about my favorite visual novel, AI the Somnium Files, because I've always wanted to. Plus, it's getting a sequel pretty soon, or pretty recently, depending on how long it takes me to edit this. So it felt relevant, I guess. Anyways, I mostly want to talk about this game in broad terms, about why I like it so much and why you definitely should play it. So I don't want to go too deep into the actual details about the game itself, but here's just a very basic overview of the game if you've never played it before. So, The Somnium Files was a game developed by Spike Chunsoft back in 2019, and was directed by Kotaro Uchikoshi, who was the main brains behind the Zero Escape and Infinity series. The game itself is an investigation mystery thing, where you play as dual leads, Kaname Date, an investigator working for a special branch of the PD known as Abyss, and Aiba, an AI who lives in Date's eyeball. Just roll with it, it's a surprisingly effective pairing. Anyways, the place where they work, Abyss, is special because they have a machine that allows Date and Aiba to connect with sleeping people and basically enter their dreams, or somnium. Which is useful because while the info you glean from someone's dreams can't be used as any hard evidence in court or something like that, it usually can turn up useful info on stuff that a simple interrogation can't divulge, like maybe where a suspect hid something, or digging through a trauma that a victim is trying to suppress. So, the game is split into two main gameplay sections. One, where you control Date doing a Phoenix Wright style investigation, where you go to a list of predetermined locations, click on everything and everyone until you've gained all the evidence available at said location, then move on until you've finally collected enough evidence to move on with the actual mystery. And the second, where you control Aiba exploring someone's somnium, where you move in third person, there's now a time limit, and the whole situation is a lot more fantastical, being a dream and all. And before we move on, if you've never played the game before, but that brief description of it and my personal recommendation of it were enough to get you at least slightly interested in the game, I might suggest that you just stop the video here and go give it a try yourself, because like most visual novels, AI the Somnium Files is at its best when you have no idea what's coming. And I mean, I'm not going to spoil anything major in this video, but as with talking about anything and what truly makes it great, which I will be doing quite a bit of that, the first-time magic that one experiences when going into a game that they know nothing about may be slightly dampened. Okay? Well, for those of you too stubborn to take my advice, or who have already played the game and want to either yell at me or reminisce alongside me, let's get into the good and the bad of the Somnium Files. Let's start with some good, shall we? Namely... Yeah, I know, talking about comedy is never particularly productive, but I don't care. This game's fucking funny. It is absolutely swarming with so many different over-the-top interactions, optional dialogue choices, both in and out of the dreams. For example, look at your boss's office here, filled to the brim with a bunch of random doodads and junk. Well, over the course of the game, just about every single one of these objects can be interacted with in some way, giving you some form of unique dialogue between Date and your boss.
Looking at that reminds me of my old boyfriend from high school.
You said that about the soccer ball yesterday.
Oh, that just reminded me of his balls. Because of the size, you know?
That sounds like a serious medical condition.
And most of the time, they are entertaining as hell, and the sheer amount out there means that I don't think there's a person alive who could play through this game and not crack a smile. It's all done in a rather simple style, but between the randomness, the quantity, and the fair number of genuinely clever one-liners, the game ends up with a charm all its own, and I am all for that.
Interesting. This kind of furniture is often used for pile drivers in professional wrestling.
Where on earth did you learn that?
There's this one line Iris says like halfway through the game, and for some reason, me and my friend just can't stop quoting it every time there's an awkward silence that happens to fall between us.
Start the insect show now! Wait a minute. This is a gangster den.
I don't know why, but for some reason the way she says it never fails to make me chuckle. Regardless, it's safe to say I love the humor of this game. So, keeping that in mind, let's take a look at this next point. Okay, hear me out. I said before that this game has a ton of optional dialogue and interactions. Well, in truth, a good amount, a very sizable chunk of those interactions are crude.
Whoa! Porno mag!
There's a lot of jokes in this game that amount to little more than, hey, that girl has big boobs, or man, I really want to watch some porn, which in and of itself isn't necessarily a bad thing. Those kind of jokes have their place too, and definitely can be funny. But there are a lot of them, and even for somebody like me, who doesn't particularly mind those kind of jokes, it can get tiring after a while. It's definitely the kind of humor that can split a player base, and I imagine there are a good handful of people who ended up dropping the game solely due to those jokes not landing for them. And in a way, I can understand that. The Somnium Files follows a sort of branching path thing, similar to its predecessor Zero Escape, though not nearly as convoluted as Virtue's Last Reward was. As such, it has a story structure where each branch of the storyline is in itself its own little contained story, but also provides a small glimpse into the larger story at hand. And that can be a difficult story to balance, since there are so many moving pieces and you need to keep all the smaller stories relevant, while not spoiling too much of the big picture until you're ready. And for what it's worth, I think the game does a great job at this. It's not perfect by any means. As with anything in this vein, there are a few points here and there where if you look at them too hard, they start to crumble a little. The moment that always bugged me was, how do I explain this without spoiling anything? Something Boss does in her past, and we're given a reason for why she did it, but the reason itself just doesn't feel adequate enough to explain why she did what she did. And no, despite what it sounds like, I'm not talking about her killing someone or something like that. But for the most important points of the story, the big twists and the main mystery, I think the game does a great job at gathering all the jumbled, spread apart pieces together and forming a coherent and mostly rewarding plot. It feels good to finish this game, and it can even make a subsequent playthrough of the game feel worth it. Going back and seeing all the foreshadowing and references you missed the first time through is a hallmark I frequently find in many of my favorite games, and the Somnium Files is no exception in that regard. But, with that being said, let's talk about the other aspect of the game. Namely, I don't think it's a hot take to say that visual novel gameplay generally sucks. And in a way, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, obviously the story is the focus of the whole thing, so of course less resources are allocated to the gameplay. But I mean, it's not like you couldn't have it both ways, have both solid gameplay and a fascinating story. So let's look at the problems specific to the Somnium Files. The investigation sections following Date are about what you would expect for this kind of thing. A simple point and click on everything until you can click no more and move on type of affair. But as I said before, there are enough unique interactions with the environment around you that you don't get bored doing it. Although, something that highlights all the interactable objects, similar to what Danganronpa has, would have been nice. More unique to the Somnium Files is the dream exploration sections. This is the real gameplay of AI, because there's an actual challenge here. Solve the mystery surrounding the suspect's dream before time runs out. Like the investigation sections, there are enough goofy, heartfelt, and/or interesting interactions scattered throughout the dream that you won't instantly get bored with the simple gameplay, but there are still a few issues with it. Namely, the solution is oftentimes rather convoluted. Which, yes, I get that's the point. You're inside a dream, the solutions aren't meant to make sense, it's dream logic, but that doesn't really change the fact that Spike Chunsoft have created a gameplay loop that is essentially just trial and error. Now, to be fair to the game, a fair amount of the time there will be some hints on the direction you should head, sometimes through stuff like sounds or camera angles, other times through just good old-fashioned logic, but it doesn't change the fact that it's frustrating to keep screwing up on the first checkpoint, only to realize later that you spent so long on that first checkpoint that you don't have enough time to complete the second or third checkpoint, meaning the whole checkpoint thing was pointless to begin with, and you have to start the whole damn Somnium over again. And, well, this is a bit more of a niggle, but I feel they could have been a bit more creative with the dreams overall. I mean, we're inside people's heads, where anything can happen, so why not go a little nuts with it? There are a few unique examples, like one where you play Minecraft, or one where you enter the dream of somebody with a neurological condition, which causes their dream to physically behave differently than any of the other dreams you've been in before. But a lot of them are just kind of in a building or a field or something and behave surprisingly close to real life with maybe one or two odd interactions. It's far from the worst thing ever because, I mean, obviously somewhat normal dreams are definitely things people have, and they're usually used effectively in showing us the mental state of the person's dream we're exploring, but I don't know, it would have been cool to play around with it. Maybe one where the person's constantly falling, and if they hit the ground, the time limit instantly shoots to 0. Or a nightmare where the person can't move and something they can't see is chasing them and Iva has to help them escape. You know, something like that. Whatever, that's just small little things, not worth talking about too much. What is a big deal and needs to be talked about is the last piece of gameplay I want to complain about, namely the action scenes. So, every once in a while, between investigations and Somnium dives, you're put into these sort of action set pieces, where usually Date and Iba are attacked by multiple gunmen and have to drive them off. And on the surface, they're fine. They're really wacky, over the top most of the time, which is cool. But they're accompanied by some of the most uninspired QuickTime events I have ever seen in a video game. Actually, now that I think about it, is it even possible to have an inspired QTE section? Is that what a rhythm game is? Whatever. The point is, it sucks here. It drags on for too long, is basically impossible to screw up, and quite frankly, the entire experience would improve without it if the whole thing was just played out as a cutscene without any of your damn input. But I digress. Before I start boring you to death here, let's move on to the big point. The real reason why I made this video, why AI the Somnium Files is so good. The reason why I'm so excited for the sequel, and the real reason why you should play this game. Man, I don't know what it is about Uchikoshi, but my god can that man make me fall in love with a bunch of snarky assholes. Right, so, where do we begin here? You know what? Why don't we start with the worst character? Because, man, is he fun to talk about. This is Ota. Ota is the worst. Like, scientifically, factually, the worst. Ota is a 24-year-old college dropout living with his mother. He is an aspiring author, by which I mean he occasionally writes 500 words before deciding writing is hard, ditching the whole idea and going to hang out at a local maid cafe. He spends the majority of his time wasting his money, either at said maid cafe or on a local streamer girl 6 years younger than him that he shadows constantly. Speaking of said streamer girl, the first time we meet Ota, we find him in the middle of a little process known as sock puppeting, where he flames the poor girl with several fake accounts, only to have his main account step in and, heroically, refute their baseless claims. Over the course of the game, we see Ota do such heroic deeds like assault a police officer, yell constantly at his elderly mother, and, lest we forget, accompany a 12-year-old girl to an abandoned amusement park where they discover a dead body, and Ota, being the man that he is so scared by the whole ordeal that he abandons her, the 12-year-old girl, in a derelict amusement park at night with a dead body. Doesn't even go back to check if she's okay. He runs away, anonymously calls the cops, and pretends it never happened. So, like I said, he's the worst. However, I can't bring myself to hate Ota. Well, I mean, I kind of can, but the thing that the Somnium Files does so well is it manages to make its characters feel so, I won't say real, but relatable, I guess, for as basic a term as that is, because despite how easy it is to initially hate Ota over the course of the game, you get to learn more about him. How he's just a kid who went through a couple mistakes and mishaps and ended up where he is. How he has people who care about him, people he cares about, people he'll actually fight for despite being a massive coward. And of course, his ending is just one of the most heartfelt, touching scenes I've ever witnessed. There's even a semi-famous story that Ota's VA ended up calling his mother after finishing the recording because it just moved him so much. And that is the core of what makes the Somnium Files so great. A cast of characters that manage to evolve past their initial grab bag of traits and become true characters. People with feelings and backstories that you can relate to or care about. Hitomi's quiet, soft-spoken nature hiding how truly determined she can be. Iris's upbeat, quirky outlook giving way to a fundamental despair at things to come. Zoe's cocky, condescending attitude blurring whatever his true intentions could be. And of course, Mizuki's, well, Mizuki's everything, really. I'm pretty sure it's illegal to play this game and not love everything about Mizuki. The side characters too, while not quite as deep as the main crew, are just so damn entertaining you can't help but love them. Moma, the most based man to ever exist, Big Boob's receptionist whose surreal, laid-back look in life makes her all the more intriguing, Mama's confident but caring attitude, that one maid who's so open about how her cafe's ripping its customers off, and of course everyone's favorite, dear, sweet Kuromi. But at the center of it all sits the main two. The two characters the entire game revolves around, the anime buddy cop duo that is Date and Aiba. The only characters we really get to look at inside and out, the two who provide a color commentary over the entire game. At its heart, the game really is about the two of them, isn't it? Date, an outwardly professional man who tries his best to be a solid detective, but since we have front row seats to his inner thoughts, we know he's actually something of a laid-back joker who is also a total perv. Aiba, on the other hand, is a more uptight by-the-books kind of AI, who's long grown tired of Date's shenanigans. She spends a lot of her time doing his job better than him, but deep down does fundamentally care for and respect him. Together, they form a, as I said, buddy cop duo, the likes of which has never been seen. And while I could go into detail about each and every little thing that makes them such a good pairing to follow on an adventure like this, it really only boils down to one thing I need to say. They're fun. It's fun to watch them interact. I'm not kidding when I say I could watch their personalities bounce off each other almost indefinitely. They butt heads and bicker constantly like an old married couple. Whatever situation comes your way, usually one of them will have a quip or one-liner ready, at the other's chagrin. And, even funnier than that, the rare circumstances where their personalities align and they actually agree on something. The two of them just have this chemistry that is so addictive. I love it. Overall, AI The Somnium Files is not a perfect game by any means. It's the kind of game that I've seen, through reviews and comments, has the potential to rub people the wrong way. And hey, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, or them. Sometimes that's just the way things work out. But for me personally, I love this game. It's the perfect mix of mystery, comedy, and heart that just makes me feel happy whenever I see it. There's this song that plays a couple times throughout the game called Rainbow Arrow, and the first time you hear it, it's kind of the cringiest thing you've ever heard. But, god damn it, by the end of the game, when they reprise the whole thing and the entire crew is singing the fucking song, I was there. I was singing along with the lyrics. A big stupid grin plastered over my big stupid face. I was so happy to hear it again. And, well, I don't know. I feel like that song as a whole really encapsulates the whole AI The Somnium Files experience. Anyways, I know this was a pretty short video, but I didn't want to waste too much time on it. I just wanted to talk about one of my favorite games. So, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it.